from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hey, everybody. Happy New Year and welcome to the latest or first 2025 episode of Talking Catholic. Thank you all for joining us in this, I hope, wonderful time of year. We're actually recording this a few weeks early, so I have no idea if Armageddon occurred in the offing, but assuming it didn't, you guys are in for a great year. We already have a ton of great episodes already lined up for the future, and I'm very excited about our 2025 year, which I think is going to be our 7th year of the podcast. I know we're well past 400 episodes now, so exciting times. And I kept thinking we would run out of things to talk about, but then I meet people and I'm like, oh man, I got to get them on the podcast. And as you can tell, it may sound a little different. Like, Mike, what happened? What did you get rid of all your co-hosts? It's for starting in 2025. You're never the first one to speak. I did not get rid of my co-hosts, but we are recording this early and all of my co-hosts are very, very busy. So I brought in a special co-host, one who has never hosted with me before, and the first non-diocesan employee to co-host an episode with me. I'm very excited, but she is a two-time podcast guest, I believe, and a wonderful human being and one of my favorite people. Jennifer Dyer. Jennifer, how are you this morning?
Well, after that very warm introduction, I'm doing a lot better. And I would also like to note that I am a previous employee of the Diocese of Camden.
That is
so
true.
Maybe that counts for something.
That is true. But sadly, we lost you to greener pastures, and you are now with Catholic Charities USA. And for anyone who may not have heard one of our previous episodes, what is your role at Catholic Charities USA?
I am the director for capacity building, and I sit inside of the disaster operations office. So I work with agencies across the network, helping them to prepare for and respond to disasters. Ideally, I do that when the sun is shining and we have lots of time to think through what their role would be should a disaster happen in their diocese. But oftentimes it is when the rain is beating down or the storm is raging or fires are happening that I am working with an agency to kind of put those things in place.
And 2024 was a disaster-laden year for the United States. I have to imagine you and your crew were busy in last year.
Yeah, it was a really tough year, although it seems that every year we have a 100-year storm or worse than ever before event. In fact, I was up last night at 11 o'clock at night working with one of our amazing colleagues at Catholic Charities in St. Petersburg, trying to get someone housed who was impacted by Hurricane Milton. And St. Pete's had gotten whacked by Helene and then Milton. And so, they're just doing double duty. All of our Catholic Charities around the network are just doing amazing work day in and day out, whether the sun is shining or the sky has turned dark.
Yeah. And, that's actually, it's interesting you brought that up, particularly considering the conversation we're going to have today. We oftentimes, because of the news cycle, usually, for those of us who are not in the midst of a disaster, I think those of us on the outside kind of think of it as something bad has happened, resources were utilized, and things are better now. But that things are better now process is not something that takes, that it turns around in 2 weeks. That is something that, months and years will go past before people start to feel whole again. So that long-term recovery is definitely an issue, right?
It is, and that's really where our Catholic Charities agencies shine. They are in the community long before a disaster strikes, and they remain there forever. And so when a disaster happens, there's a lot of attention and a lot of external folks to that community come in, and they provide really important help. But a lot of donations are given in those early stages to organizations that only do early response. And so it becomes a challenge for Catholic Charities agencies that focus on the long-term recovery because the media has left and the attention isn't there anymore. I was thinking about this as I was preparing for our chat today. I was with Catholic Charities USA, but Melissa Hershka and I were having a conversation, I think in 2022, and we were identifying some funding for Hurricane Sandy families that they were still working to try and get rehoused. And so that was 10 years later that
Yeah.
Camden was still working Sandy.
Yeah.
And we see that all over the country, you know, their
Yeah.
Catholic Charities agencies are working it 10 years later.
Yeah. And I have to say, this is actually you and I had an opportunity to spend some time together recently,
We did.
and all of our colleagues all of your colleagues, all of my friends in the disaster space. I got to hang at with you guys at the name of a conference that always eludes me because it's not a conference. It's actually something else entirely that no matter how many times I write it down, I will never remember it. But you and I got to hang out in Tulsa, Oklahoma earlier in December at the Applied Institute for Disaster Excellence, which is really a great opportunity. And I'm so thankful that I was now been asked to present at it with my co-presenter, Dan Altno. The last 3 years. And I used to tell, or not used to tell, I still tell everyone over at Catholic Charities that when I want to feel better, I hang out with folks at Catholic Charities because even amidst all of the trauma that everyone is dealing with in terms of their clients and the work that's required of them, they always have such a great smile on the face, and they're such wonderful people to be around. Even you, Jen, just an absolute delight.
Well, I think of that as joy of the gospel because the
Mm,
folks at Catholic Charities are living, breathing, speaking that gospel each and every day. And you're right, there is something so joyful. Every Catholic Charities agency is incredibly unique. But when you step into one, there's some type of feeling of like being home and being loved and being enveloped in every Catholic Charities I have ever been to in the entire network. It is
yeah.
just filled with beautiful, beautiful people. And so I'm always thrilled when you get to come and experience what the rest of us get to live day in and day out.
And I have to say, at that time of year is difficult. And I am someone that has a lot of work on his shoulders. So I'm always a little stressed out come the beginning of December. And while being away from my diocese at the beginning of Advent, it does create some issues. I have to tell you, even though this happens every single year, I dread going to aid because I know that it's going to back me up a little bit in workflow. And then once I get there and once I'm around all the people, I am so happy that I went because it's just such a great group of people. And even though I am not one of you, though I work with many of you in my professional life, I am very happy that you have all embraced me, and that is very kind of you. And to keep inviting me back too, that was nice. And you always have you always have aid at an interesting place. You've had it in 3 cities, the last 3 cities, places I've never been to, but always wanted to go. So thank you for giving me a reason to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, that I guarantee you would not have existed without you guys.
And listen, just for you, Mike, because you asked and because December is a difficult time for you, we're going to move it to March just for you. How about that?
That, what
So,
kindness you have.
so just for you, beginning in 2026, the Applied Institute for Disaster Excellence will take place annually in March.
That is wonderful news. Now it won't bother my beginning of Advent. It'll just be the middle of Lent. That's much easier for me to get through. There's more weeks of Lent, so that's not a problem. I can schedule around that a little easier. No, it is great. And could you want to, since we're just talking about it before we bring in our guests, you want to explain what AID is?
Yeah, I would love to. So, the Applied Institute for Disaster Excellence is a training that is by the network for the network. And so, every year, Catholic Charities USA Disaster Operations Office puts on this week-long training in a different diocese. And it's an opportunity to bring about 200 folks together for some learning and some applied ability to like apply the skills that they're learning in that environment. And so, there are workshop sessions, and in each workshop session, there is a tabletop activity or some type of exercise where they can really begin to think through what does that look like in my work? What will that look like in my diocese? We have really great keynote speakers that come from both that local diocese and across the country. We have staff that present from CCUSA, local staff that present. And we really take the opportunity kind of for the whole year to listen to our colleagues across the network. What is it that they want to hear about? What is it that we should be talking about? When we first started this about 15 years ago, it really was CCUSA and a few folks training the people who were coming. But
Mhm.
the level of expertise across the network has just grown exponentially, partly because of the trainings that have happened and partly because the disasters have been increasing and people are kind of moving into this space. And so we think of it now a little more like facilitated conversations, where we're able
Yeah.
to engage in sort of that conversation around how you care for the most vulnerable who are already living on the margins when their communities are struck by a disaster. And so
Yeah.
it really is this amazing opportunity. And I always say the workshop sessions are great and you get lots of content, but it's the ability to network with people who are doing work similar to yours across the country. And you make friends that last forever.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's just fun.
It is. And, to your point, and credit where credit is due, even though I know I get my hand slapped all the time for calling it a conference because it's not a conference, the reason it's not a conference is the reason why it's so good. Because ordinarily you think you go to a conference, you're just going to be talked at for however many days you're there. That is not the case. And my presentations with Dan, I mean, we live that. All we do is chat with our folks the entire time and talk about, I mean, we give our presentation, but we
Right.
really want to hear from them and have conversations with them and talk to them. And as you well know, having sat in Dan in my presentation, we're really just there to make jokes. And the more we make people laugh, the happier we are. But we try the stuff on the screen has a lot of information in it, so it's good. So let's not make our guests wait any longer. I have to say, I was pleased. I think all four of them that are on the podcast today were in my presentation. I know at least three of the four. I'm not sure if all four were, but then I got to go and see them present later in the week, and I was truly blown away by the quality of their presentation. And then the week comes to a close, and they get awarded at the middle of the week with this great recognition by Catholic Charities USA. So I said, well, I mean, that's a trifecta right there. I got to bring them onto the podcast. So I ended up being really impressed by all of them. So they are the crew from Northern Valley Catholic Social Services in the disaster services section of the NVCSS. Now, to our listeners, I'm going to let you know now. I'm going to do my best because I taught all these people who are on this podcast right now not to use jargon when they're talking to the media, but it's hard to stop. So occasionally with some jargon may come up, but that's okay. We'll get through this together. So the first person I'd like to invite is to talk about a little bit about herself and who she is and what she does for NVCSS is Katie. Katie, who are you?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me. It's so nice to be here. Yeah, so like you said, I work for Northern Valley Catholic Social Service. I am a program manager there. I work the campfire. It's a disaster that happened in 2018. I actually started as a disaster case manager. And then I was promoted to supervisor, and now I'm the program manager. And I also work the McKinney fire, which is a disaster that happened in 2022. So my team and I work both the campfire and the McKinney fire. We're in Northern California, just about an hour and a half north of Sacramento. Yeah, and we're just busy as ever. So we went to aid. We got to meet so many wonderful people, like you said, and we loved meeting you. So thanks for having us.
Oh no, it was great to see you and your team in action, and listen, y'all wouldn't have gotten invited if you didn't make a mark on a lot of us who were there. So we really appreciate that. So
I appreciate
I'm gonna go around my screen and in the order of my screen. So we have Makayla next. Hey, Makayla.
Hey Mike, how are you?
Oh,
Good.
good, thanks. What do you do for NVCSS?
So currently, as of about last week, after aid, I am now the program supervisor for our juvenile probation department. But I've spent the last 2 years as a disaster case manager with Katie, Abby, and Roxy, and working the park fire, or sorry, the campfire. Um, and just helping people and really just getting to know the community and the agency that I work for. And
Well,
yeah.
that's wonderful. And I'm sure some of our listeners who are on the East Coast are listening to this and go, why do they keep saying campfire? The campfire, two words, was a major disaster in Northern California's Butte County. I'm going to read this off of what I wrote. It was in 2018. It was the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in California's history. That began on the morning of November 8th, when a poorly maintained transmission line failed in a massive windstorm. It ended up taking out 5 major towns, basically destroying them. It burned for 2 weeks, chewing up 153,000 acres, displaced more than 50,000 people, destroyed more than 1,800 structures, caused more than $16.5 billion in damages. So this was no small affair that you guys were working. This was a major catastrophic event. So I just want to make sure I should have brought that up earlier, but I don't want to confuse our listeners. Oh, go ahead, Jen.
The other thing that I just wanted to make clear to our listeners is that NVCSS is the Diocese of Sacramento. So they are basically the Catholic Charities in Sacramento. Sacramento is a large diocese, and so they have a few agencies underneath it. But just in case anyone was thinking, what is NVCSS? It's the equivalent of our Catholic Charities in Camden.
Well, actually, thank you for that, Jen, because I was having a hard time figuring it out as well. So thank you. So next up, we're going to go to Roxy. And Roxy, what do you do with NVCSS and how long you've been there and things like that?
It's great to see you guys again. Thanks for having us. I've been with NVCSS for about 4 years, a little over 4 years now. I am a disaster case manager, working with my team here, Katie, Abby, and Makayla. And so I've enjoyed the last 4 years. I never thought I'd be in disaster services. I actually have a background in exercise physiology, shocking, but, a purpose of my life is always to kind of help people. And that's kind of my main mission and goal of life. And so I think it just kind of fell right into place. I'm helping people every day. So I love doing what I'm doing and can't ask for a better team to do it with me.
I believe you. And certainly, last but certainly not least, rather, Abby is joining us. Hey, Abby.
I just have to say that I've always wanted to be on a podcast, so I'm so thrilled to do this. I don't know if the girls know that, but it's like literally so exciting to me. So thank you for having us. I'm Abby Mebrahtu. I am the supervisor of the disaster case management program here. I also started with Katie as a disaster case manager and then transitioned into a supervisor. I actually grew up 10, 15 minutes away from where the major fire happened and where the town that mostly got destroyed. And so I had recently just moved back right before the fire and decided that I wanted to help and didn't know anything about disaster case management. And here I am I'm working in my 6th year now. So it's been a journey, but it has been a joy to be able to help my community rebuild and recover from a terrible fire.
Now I'm even more excited that it's always been your dream to be on a podcast, Abby. I'm so happy I can make that happen. And I'm now going to give you the opportunity. Anytime you have future podcast ideas, feel free to pitch them my way, and you can be my co-host going forward.
You should have said that.
You're in.
Now I'm going to take you up on it.
You are in. Jen might be upset about this, but you're in, Abby. So we've been talking about, disaster case management and things like that. So, Katie, going back to you, what is a disaster case manager and what do they do?
Sure. When I first started, I had no idea the answer to that question. What's funny is I have a child development background and used to work for child abuse prevention. And so when I found myself working as a disaster case manager, often when a disaster happens, you pull everything together and you just, hit the ground running. And we found ourselves in a little church cafeteria working out of a broom closet, calling people, and we figured it out as we went. But a disaster case manager is there to support the disaster survivors. We are there to advocate for them. We are there to listen to them. We are there to see what they need right after a disaster and then into the years that it takes to actually recover. So 6 years out, we're into our long-term recovery. We have many people that are still not recovered that we work with every single day. New people that have never had a disaster case manager still coming to us every month. And our job is to support them. Our job is to connect them to resources. Our job is to help with safe and sustainable housing. How can we find that? What can we do to support them? Are there applications that we can help them fill out? Is there funding that we can access? I don't think there is just one thing that we do. We're finding 6 years later that we're here to help in any way that we can. So I hope that helps a little bit describe what we do, but we're basically in the community. We're working with people who still haven't recovered from this major disaster. And we're asking them, what can we do? What can we do to help you? And then when they express what that is, we try our very best to find a way. And if we can't, we're looking at resources. We're talking to other people in the community. How can we best support this individual?
While I was an aide, you as a group, you gave two presentations, which were great. And I actually wanted to talk about that because you both, you and Abby have mentioned this now a couple of times. Supporting your presentations were supporting unique recovery needs for pre-disaster homeless and extreme low income. And then your other one was challenges in post-disaster housing. So I guess my question first is, what is a long-term recovery plan, and how do you put one together? And Abby, I'll ask you this question. In your time, I specifically saw your presentation related to this. How do you put one together, and how do you think about one before a disaster strikes?
I think that it has evolved since we've started. In the beginning, I think it was just hearing the client out and figuring out where they were at. A lot of our clients were living in the Walmart parking lot or in shelters because housing is an issue in our county. And so I think the plan was just to figure out how to get them to housing. And now I think it has evolved to making sure that their life is either better or the same as it was pre-fire, and making sure that we're putting people in a situation that they can sustain long term. So making sure that they have income, making sure that they have food. And then, of course, because they lost everything, now they need all the basic things, couches, beds, all the things. So our recovery plan is to pretty much make sure that we understand where they're at and where they're trying to go, and figure out how we can fill in that gap for them, so that when we do close their case at the end, and that they are fully ready to move on and recover fully with their lives, and making sure that we're not leaving any gaps. In the beginning, it was a piece of paper that was a recovery plan, and we had boxes and we checked them off as we went. And now it's really just like a personal thing, like, how can I help you? What can I do for you? And then really just giving them the strength to be able to do it on their own. A lot of our clients, and the reason why we were chosen to do this topic, is that a lot of our clients live on Social Security. A lot of them were very low income pre-fire. And so helping them get cash aid or food stamps or anything else that could help them recover and get them better to where they were at is really the goal of the long-term recovery. And I think it's called long-term because it's been 6 years since the fire, and here we are still working. And as Katie said, we still have clients that come in every week that have never had a disaster case manager, which to us is always so shocking because we have been so prevalent in the community. But, as time goes on, people realize that they need the assistance and they couldn't do it on their own. And so thankfully, we're still here to be able to fill in those gaps for them.
And I think one of the things that Catholic Charities across the country and NVCSS in a really beautiful way do is, the goal with disaster case management is not to go back to the day before the disaster. So when you're working with folks who are so vulnerable and living on the margins and in these really difficult situations, the goal is to use the disaster as an opportunity to look at, okay, well, what can we do to make you more resilient, to help you get to a place where you have more stability in your life and hopefully be better able to withstand a future potential disaster. And I just think that the folks at NVCSS do that in a really, really beautiful way. And it's part of the reason why they won the Innovative in Disaster Excellence Award at AID that you referenced earlier, Mike.
Thank you. Roxy, you came along a little later. You came on post fire, correct? Or were you there during? You came in post fire. What was it like for you to sort of come into that situation and see how these like? Did you like me? Did you have an expectation that this was everything was buttoned up, or did you have a feeling that you knew that this was going to be that there were services and needs still required for that community? Oh, hold on. I think you might be muted. Did I lose you? Oh, no. Yeah, I don't have you, Roxy. Sorry. Well, Roxy, if it's okay, I'm going to pass along that question to Makayla. Makayla, how about
Okay.
you?
So I was the last member to join, newest on the team. So coming into kind of the disaster world after everyone kind of there's this assumption, like Jen mentioned earlier, that, a couple weeks in and people tend to feel like recovery should be finished. So I
Mhm.
came on 4 years after the fire happened, and to see the amount of people that still need help, um, was shocking, but also not shocking because of how big this fire was. Um, I think it's so amazing that we have these services still available to provide, but it definitely was a different world to navigate. I came in from retail and had no idea that disaster services were even a thing. Um, I was in the middle of a master's program and wanted to be in social work, and I could not have joined a better program, a better community. And I think it's just been so amazing to kind of see the work that we've been able to do, just even in the last 2 years that I've been here. Uh,
Yeah, that's great. Well, I
Hey,
think Roxy has rejoined us. So I don't want to miss out on the opportunity of hearing from her. So can we hear you now, Roxy?
You guys hear
Oh
me?
no.
Oh,
Oh wait,
wait, is it back?
wait. Hold on. You can't. Yep,
oh,
you're back. There you go.
Okay. This happens all the time. I'm sorry. All right. So when I first started a little over 4 years ago, I kind of just got thrown into it. I was heavily affected by the fire. I actually lost my job because of the fire. I was working full time up there in Paradise, California. I was working with children with disabilities and with an emphasis on occupational therapy at the time. And so I actually was housing a lot of my friends and family who lost everything in the fire as well. So when this opportunity came about, I went in full force. I again had no idea what disaster case manager was, but I knew that I wanted to help the community. And so I jumped in, and with about a week, I had a full caseload. I took it from the very start, and I got to know my clients right away off the bat. So I came from not knowing what to do. Within a week, I had 30 clients. So it was
Wow.
very exciting and nerve-wracking at the exact same time. I went to support for with my supervisors, and here we are now. And I'm excited to say that the community has been very thankful for what we've all been doing, and it's going to continue to grow as the year comes on.
I know that you all did a lot of work with your town officials because of the rules and very specific guidelines that were in place. Can you talk a little bit about the creative way that you built those relationships to help those impacted?
Yeah. You guys want me to start? So in the town of Paradise specifically, there were so many people that lost, everything. I mean, 18,800 structures, homes, buildings were destroyed. And so there was an urgency ordinance that was put into place where people could return after FEMA trailers left and all of that. People could return to their disaster properties, and they could live in travel trailers on the disaster properties. And to do that, you had to have a permit, and there's all these things that you have to have to fall under the ordinance. And so code enforcement officials would go out and they would visit people to make sure that they have the permits and they have all of the things that they need to be living on that property in the travel trailers. And as they went out, they realized, after so much time had gone by, they really need support in their recovery. We're letting them live in travel trailers on the disaster property, but there's a big gap here. They're going to continue to live this way, and they need help to rebuild or to find housing or whatever it is. And so we collaborated, and we started, disaster case managers started going out with the Town of Paradise Code Enforcement, the Town of Paradise Police, and the Town of Paradise Fire Inspectors. And twice a week, we would go to the properties, and instead of it being, a negative thing of, oh, code enforcement is here to check on me and see if, I'm following all of the guidelines, it's, hey, we brought these disaster case managers with us, and they're here to help you. And a lot of the people, that we were meeting at that time, that we still do today, but a lot of the people, maybe didn't have cell phones. Maybe they didn't have vehicles to drive into town. Maybe they were living so remotely, we call it on the ridge, without all of the services. And so we were able to go and meet people at their residence and tell them we're here to help you. And so that formed, number one, a great relationship between us and our town officials. But number two, it became such a positive thing that now we go out and people look forward to us coming. And again, we still meet people that have not had services. It's hard to even say that, but we do. And we credit a lot of the work that we do and the support that we have from our town officials. We go out, we're down to once a week. We go out like every Wednesday morning, and we spend a half a day out. We go to every property that we can, and we meet as many people as we can. Sometimes we just talk. Sometimes we look at the property. Sometimes we do case management right there and sign them up. It just depends on the human and where we are to meet them. But it's been a great collaboration. And we're thrilled to do it. We're thrilled to have it. Very unique. We did not know where it was going to go when we first started it, but I think, I can't remember the data, you guys. We've visited close to 2,500 properties in the last few years. And we've brought in so many different referrals for people who need help that way.
And I know that the campfire was in 2018, and then you were struck by McKinley Fire in 2022, right? Were there families that were impacted by both, or communities that were impacted by both?
So not the McKinney Fire. The McKinney Fire is actually out in Siskiyou County, but we did recently just have the Park Fire. And so we as a team, as an agency, we are serving Park Fire. A different program manager is kind of in charge of that. But if they were dual fire survivors, which we have seen a lot of people affected, we are serving those people under camp. So we have found the Park Fire. So basically they lost their home in camp. They relocated to the Cohasset area still in Butte County, and now they've lost their home a second time.
Wow.
And so under our camp funding, if they're dual fire survivors, we are able to assist them, and we are doing that. We're getting referrals from our local Butte 211. People are calling in. They're like, hey, we can't believe this has happened to us twice. I just recently helped a gentleman who lost his home in Paradise and then lost his home in the Park Fire. And he said, I just can't do this anymore. I want to live somewhere else. And so we helped relocate him to Washington. And he said, I just want to try a different area. I don't know if I'll make it there long term, but I've got to try something new. So we said, we can help relocate you. And so we were able to use camp funding to help him get a U-Haul truck. We packed the U-Haul truck with all the furniture that we could possibly pack it with, and then, rent and deposit. And we helped move him to Vancouver. So.
Yeah, I'm curious, Abby, is there a lot of interconnectedness between the social service organizations, the non-governmental agencies in like Northern California and these sort of situations? Are you working with Red Cross, Salvation Army, folks like that?
Yeah, one of our main supporters is United Way. We have a program called the SHOP program where once clients find stable housing, they can help with rent, deposit, they can help with furniture, appliances. One great thing is a lot of our clients had, and a lot of our survivors had pets that survived with them, and they were very emotionally attached, as they should be. And so this SHOP program will also pay for their pet deposit if the apartments or where they're moving to will allow them to have their pets. And so United Way has been a great help for the last 5 years, helping fill in the gap. Salvation Army also participated in the very beginning, also helping with car repairs and a lot of different resources. And then a lot of our funders are nonprofits, businesses, community members that come together for our long-term recovery group and help these clients with larger recovery needs, whether that be rebuilding or just like pre-permitting steps, or relocation or just purchasing a home. And so, yeah, this community has come together. There's also, in the beginning, there was 10 different organizations providing case management, including us, because there were so many survivors. And now, 6 years later, we're the only ones left here providing case management, but we all did come together and try to help the community as best as possible. And then as funding things and as other fires and disasters happen, other organizations move on to different things. And we've just had the privilege of being able to continue to work camp and try to see as many survivors recover as possible.
That's great. I'm glad. I am glad to see that both from a governmental and non-governmental standpoint that there's a lot of people coming together. I know that there's an acronym for this, Jen. VOAD. Did I get it right?
Oh, Walsh, we are so proud of you. Yes, it is VOAD, Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. And so there's at the national level, the state level, and then within a local community. Well done. You have been paying attention at AID.
You people are smarter than me. I listen to everything that people who are smarter than me say. I do want to say that to our listeners who might be interested in this, there is actually a documentary about this fire. It was done by Ron Howard. It's now streaming on Hulu, and it's called Rebuilding Paradise. So if you want to sort of see were any of you a part of that documentary? Did anyone or any of your clients or anything like that? Okay. Missed opportunity, Mr. Howard. Missed opportunity. I do want to talk to each of you a little bit about your path to your vocation here. Because as Jen knows, I have a habit of collecting social workers as friends and colleagues. And sadly, you are all, I now consider you all friends and colleagues because you've taken my classes or I got to hang out. Actually, I have to say, I stole Roxy's photo that she had posted to the app that was taken in my class or Dan and I's class. And I put it on my personal Instagram. So Roxy, this is your shout out that's from you. And Makayla was kind enough to take a photograph of Jen and myself and Melissa Hershka in front of the banner. So thank you for your photography skills more than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
But I would like to hear sort of the path you all took. Roxy, you kind of mentioned yours a little earlier, and so I'll go back to you. You said you kind of didn't expect to become a social worker, and here you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of just fell through it because, like I mentioned earlier, my passion is just to always help people. And, things just always don't work out when you do go to school. So unfortunately, in that case, it was finances. And so this opportunity, I live in an area where the community is just so well-rounded and so connected together. And so everyone just wants to help each other. And so moving into the social work field, helping others, really seeing how you build the trust with everybody, with our community, as well as unincorporated areas is just truly, it's just so heartwarming. And you make a difference every day, and it's just going to be ongoing. And I get a lot of thanks. I get a lot of recognition from my clients. We shed a lot of tears together growing from few years. I've had some clients who I've had for the entire time I've started case management, and they still are open to this day. And they're starting to get closed and continuing that recovery after their recovery path. And so we just want to make sure that we can set them up with those resources after they're in their house, and what community resources are out there, what kind of community groups they can be a part of, just so they can truly feel welcomed and together with their community.
That's wonderful. How about you, Abby? What brought you into this high-paying glory job?
So I actually grew up here, but I left to go to school, and then I had some stuff, family stuff happen, and it required me to move back to Butte County. And I just happened to see it online, and so I was like, oh, let me just apply. I don't know. One thing my mom has always said is that you've always been blessed with good jobs. Like you don't go into things thinking that it's going to be your path, but then you get in there and like it just is for you. And so I think this job was that for me. It was being able to help the community that I grew up in. And I got to have a degree in sociology. And like Roxy said earlier, it was always just my goal to be a help to my community. And I had a job previously when I lived in Sacramento that was allowing me to do that. And so this job really just fulfilled that for me as well. Definitely didn't have any experience in case management or any of that. But I was thrown in, and 6 years later, I have figured out how to do this. And I can't really see me doing anything else now. Katie and I talk all the time about like, what do we do next? Like when this is said and done, like, I don't know how we don't do some type of case management and help people because it's been so fulfilling for us.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I don't know anybody who is a disaster case manager who was like, yeah, this was my path from the beginning. Like, I think it's something that comes to you and it just evolves into something so great. And then being able to just go to aid and present and, so many things have come together while being in this job. And so, yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. Wasn't for this job, you wouldn't be on a podcast right now. Look at that.
Yeah,
It's
I
amazing, eh?
know. How cool is that?
How about you, Katie? How did you come to this?
Mine is actually a funny, unique story. I actually worked for Northern Valley Catholic Social Service probably about 16 years ago. And my direct supervisor is now my executive director. So I
Oh,
worked in a child abuse prevention program, helping young moms who were pregnant or just given birth follow a healthy families America model to prevent child abuse. It's a great program. We still have it at NVCSS today. It's called Baby Steps. I loved that job so much, but I left because I had a child who has learning challenges. And while I was helping everybody else's child, I needed to find space to help my own. So I started homeschooling him. I did that for many, many years. And then my oldest son got into college, and I thought, okay, I've got to go back to work. And I ran into Erna, my executive director, downtown Chico. And I was like, hey, Erna, like I need a job. And she was like, oh, it just so happens I'm hiring. And she's like, I'll text you tomorrow. And I was like, oh, okay, she'll text me tomorrow. Well, tomorrow came and went. She never texted me. And I was like, well, she had a glass of wine. Maybe she didn't really want to hire me. So a couple of weeks go by and she calls me on the phone. She says, hey, you never turned in your application. And I was like, well, you never text me. And she said, I'm terrible at texting. Come in the office and bring in your resume. And so I went to the office and I brought my resume and they interviewed me right then and there. And the rest is history. That's how I came
wow.
back to NVCSS, and it was the best decision I ever made.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now,
So I have a passion for helping people. I mean, I've never thought that I would do anything else but to find a position where I help someone, whether it's children or survivors of a disaster, and who knows what it'll be next. But my husband's a physical therapist. We both like to help people, so we'll continue the path.
it's funny. Jen and I, when we were at Aid this past time, we were having a conversation on the power of the Holy Spirit, and that each of us have a devotion to it. If the Holy Spirit is not the patron, well, I wouldn't be a patron saint, but is not the patron of social service workers, I'll never know what is, because many times the Holy Spirit has bailed us out. And well, bailed you guys out, me as a communications person. But Makayla, so you and I did get a chance to chat a little bit about your path while we were having lunch, I think, one day, maybe breakfast. And I will say yours is unique, and the fact that you've moved on to this thing that you've always wanted to do is unique as well. So what's been your path to this?
So starting out in undergrad, I had this dream and vision of being a therapist in prison systems. Um, and how life works, I took a little break from school and decided I was gonna just work and ended up going back to school and put myself through school working retail and spent a good 6 years there. Um, Graduated with, my bachelor's in psychology and still was like, I'm gonna be a therapist. Um, and then just through meeting people, realized I think social work is maybe my route and um, just applied everywhere.
Mhm.
And I got a call from Katie and Abby one day to come in and interview for the disaster case management position and thought, you know what, let's try it. It's in the field I want to be in, and I can only learn and grow from there. Um, Needed to get some experience within social work as I was going through my master's program. And, I was talking to Katie one day about my vision for what I wanted to do in life. And um, I decided I still wanted to work in the criminal justice system. And so she introduced me to Norma, which is our assistant director for community programming. And she has a program in juvenile hall that needed help, and I needed an internship. So while getting to work in disaster services full time, I got to also be a part of this other program that was needing assistance and growth, and got to spend the last year and a half doing that. And it has kind of just blossomed, and I get to see kind of different avenues. And um, I'm so grateful for the work that I've gotten to do in disasters because I think it's only helped me with other programs and other avenues. And there's so much connectedness between programs and um, the learning opportunities and different ways that you can kind of help people. And you don't have to be so siloed in different things.
Mhm.
That kind of brings me to where I'm at today. And I now am full-time with juvenile hall, but
Slightly regretting that decision to introduce her to Norma, but it's okay. It's okay.
but my heart will always be with disasters. And,
That was
I'm
Makayla's very first day on code enforcement with me.
as
It was
Oh.
a wild day. And then I introduced her to Norma, and the rest is history.
but we're
Wow.
office away from each other. And so I still get to see them every day. And I still get to be a part of the community and a part of the disaster world. And I couldn't be more grateful for all the opportunities that I've gotten and all the people I've gotten to meet and
Well,
clients.
I think I'm judging from the people I've met in my past, because I've worked with a number of social service agencies over the years. You have joined a permanent sorority of disaster folks, and I think you're a permanent member. As a matter of fact, Jen just reminded me in the chat here that you guys all recently deployed to the Carolinas for when that most recent hurricane rolled through. So you guys were helping out with folks in what, the Knoxville area, was it? Yeah.
Houston,
Okay.
Tennessee.
Oh, that's right. You didn't Tennessee. Sorry. And I have to imagine, see, that's the problem. And Jen has gotten her claws into you is what's occurred now. Is once you start deploying places, Catholic Charities USA knows that you are now in their DNA. And you will see. I've never deployed. I've never been asked to deploy either, but I've never deployed. So I'm still arm's length still. But once you start deploying, you get around all those people, you start going to aid, you're in. So just know now, Makayla, no matter what you do in your future, you will always be a disaster case manager.
And I'm
Period. Because
grateful for it.
And I think that's really well said, Mike, because I would say that is the beauty of the network. In 2006, the folks at NVCSS were learning how to do this thing we call disaster case management. And in 2024, they went to the Diocese of Knoxville to help them figure out what it is that they want to do during disaster case management. And I don't know that anyone can really understand what it feels like when a disaster impacts your diocese and you're not used to it happening. I felt it with Sandy, and I've told this story a million times. I won't tell it again, but it feels very different when you're responding to a disaster in a different diocese or in a different community than when it's your own community. And so for NVCSS to be able to go and help Knoxville think through what it is they want to do, to say to them, yes, yes, what you're feeling right now is valid. That's how we would expect you to feel at this point in time. You will get through it, you know, and to kind of give them that vision into the future. And every Catholic Charities is unique. And so when NVCSS goes into Knoxville, they don't tell them how to do it, right? They tell them, they share with them how they did it, but then they kind of lay out opportunities and who the partners are, connecting with VOAD, connecting with the partners in the community and all the different ways that you can serve and how you can lean into your gifts and what you do well as an agency and just kind of spin it into how you do that during a disaster.
There's something I probably should also warn the four of you about is not only does this make you permanent disaster caseworkers that can be called upon at any time. Jen does have a habit of seeing people of skill and coercing them into taking a job with Catholic Charities USA. So just know those possibilities always exist. You may be in Northern California, but you may be working for somebody else down the road because Jen's got an eye for talent. I'm warning you now. Listen, I really want to thank all of you for being on the podcast and giving our listeners an inside view of the world you guys live in. I've talked about this in prior social service podcasts, but there is something about social workers that I have a particular fondness for, particularly as colleagues, but certainly as friends too. I find social workers to be very well grounded. You guys see the world as it is and not necessarily as you want it to be. You may want it to be a certain way, but you see it as is. And you guys have great motors. Like you guys work and work and work. You work until the job is done or until the next day is called upon that the job needs to be done. And I have great respect for that, which is one of the reasons why I enjoy going to AID every year. Even though I hate presenting, I always feel like I'm the guy there that absolutely does not belong, but I actually get so much out of it because I'm around you folks, and I really want to thank you all for that and allowing me into your little world, not so little world actually, very important and large world. Jen, as we're closing up, do you have any last final thoughts? Final questions?
No, I just want to say that I think NVCSS is an amazing group of people, and they have done great work in their community and shared their expertise with the network. And that is a gift that we deeply appreciate at CCUSA.
And I will tell our listeners, if you want to learn more, in addition to going to the Hulu show, you can always go to nvcss.org to learn more about this crew and the great work they do. You can actually look them up under disaster services, but there's a number of different programs. Actually, Katie, while we have a few minutes left, what else does NVCSS do?
Oh my gosh, you're going to ask me that question.
Apologize.
There's so much NVCSS does. I don't know that I can list it all. Do you girls want to start shouting some things out? I mean, we've got View Baby Steps. We have teen parenting programs. We have Promotoris. We have
Immigration department,
juvenile hall.
We serve many counties, and we have so many wonderful programs, and it is all there on nvcss.org.
Yeah, it's very good. And from a Catholic Charities USA standpoint, Jen, if people wanted to learn more about Catholic Charities USA, where would they go?
They should go to our website, catholiccharitiesusa.org.
There you go. And I will tell you that we are trying to get a special guest on the podcast from Catholic Charities. I'm not going to say who it is, but there's somebody I've wanted to have on for a while. And all I'm going to say is I was very impressed that the new executive director of Catholic Charities USA has been to both of the last two AID conferences, AID events.
Trainings.
Trainings, sure, whatever that word is. I really, one of these days I'll get it right. But I am very impressed by your new executive director and the fact that she has been present at both of them. So I look forward to talking to her at some point. So we'll see if we can make that happen down the road.
She is amazing and a blessing to us at CCUSA and the entire network.
Well, that's great. Well, maybe we'll get her on the podcast sometime soon. Who knows? Maybe Abby will co-host it with me. We'll see what happens.
Yes.
All right. Ladies, thank you very much for spending an hour with me. I really appreciate that. And to our listeners, thank you for checking us out. And we'll be back again next week. Talk to you later.